Building retuning training was conducted by Ron Underhill and Gupong Liu, scientists at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Classroom and on-site training for Maryland State Agency facility managers was conducted at Towson University in Towson, Maryland on June 17th through the 19th, 2014. This segment of training covers building walkdown at the Center for the Arts building.
My name is Ron Underhill with the Pacific Northwest National Lab, and we're here at Towson University at the Center for Arts building, and we're doing a second part of our retuning training, which consists of a building walkdown. We're on the outside of the Center for Arts building, on the back side of the chill water plant, boiler plant, and we're going to walk around the building now and look to see if there's any opportunities for energy conservation measures. When we do a walkdown, one of the things that I really emphasize with everybody who's doing a walkdown is when we generally come to a building, we're so familiar with it, we just walk right past sometimes one of the most obvious things that we should take notice of. And when I look behind me, I see that you've got a lot of roll-up doors on this side of the building. I've seen roll-up doors on the other side. Roll-up doors, obviously that's where people are bringing in freight, they're bringing in equipment. We've got a chiller plant behind me. You can see the tower. You can see the stacks for the boiler. That tells me there's some heavy equipment behind me. If there's people bringing in equipment, doing maintenance, are they leaving the roll-up doors open? Is the space conditioned? If it's conditioned and I see the roll-up door open, that means I'm letting that conditioned air, whether it's wintertime or summertime, run right out of the building. So those are some of the things that we want to be aware of. If I turn around and look up here, you can see there's a photo cell right up on the top edge of the roof. Now, don't confuse the security cameras on the corners and right here with the photo cell. Why do I want to highlight the photo cell? I think we already know why. Because if it's dirty, if it's not calibrated properly, I need to know where it's at. And does it control all the outside lights? Is there more than one photo cell on this building? How is it connected? I might have to go look at the electrical prints at this point, grab an electrician, but I want to make sure the photo cell is working properly. I need to know where it's at. The other thing that we're going to highlight is, we've already looked at the lights, but we've got a lot of outside lights on. Right now, they all indicate they're off. That's good. We want to look at the doors, the roll-up doors, as I said earlier, not only to see if they're open, but how well are the seals on the edges, on the tops and bottoms of the doors. Is it opportunity to improve the envelope? Operable windows, like we highlighted before, as we walk around, we want to see if there's any windows. Do we have any windows that are cracked? If you're in an earthquake zone, Seattle, San Francisco, LA, you get a lot of window damage. Windows, once they crack, if they're double pane, you just lost the integrity of the window. If it's got a severe crack, it might come loose and you don't know it. If I'm walking by and it comes out and it hits me, now you've got a health issue. So windows could be a safety issue besides being an envelope issue. So pipes that penetrate the building, I see some piping up along the edges here, conduits. How well did they caulk them? Are they sealed up? Expansion joints along the building seams, how well are they caulked? Those are the things that we're looking for. Besides all of that, do I have exhaust fans, supply fans? I can hear the cooling towers up on the roof. That's a good thing. They obviously should be running. But do I have other exhaust fans or intakes? Are they blocked? Do I see intake louvers? I've got some louvers right here. Are they plugged up? Am I near debris, trees, leaves, grass? Do I have any outdoor condensers? If I've got split cooling systems or air-cooled chillers, not necessarily this building, but other buildings, if they're on grassy areas, is that grass being, the clippings, are they collecting up underneath on the coils? So those are some of the things that we want to look at. Okay, so what we want to talk about is exhaust fan. This is an electrical room. I believe there's a makeup fan that's bringing air in from outside. It's on the graphic. It shows the supply fan bringing outside air in and exhausting. So you're basically moving air. It's set to maintain 85 degrees, and I saw that on the BAS as well. It's a lot of airflow. The question is, can it be raised? Can it operate at 90, 95? I don't know. That might be something to look at. Again, we're talking small changes in set points. 85 is a good number. Someone picked it. You might have to look at what the electrical equipment's rated for. I would recommend doing that as an exercise anyway. If it can tolerate warmer temperatures, the question that will always come up is if you have an electrical failure and it's coincidental to raising the temperature, someone's going to blame raising the set point. How old is the equipment? Is it ready to fail anyway? Those are the questions that need to be asked. But it's just something to be aware of. You've got several spaces like this on campus. I'm sure you have other spaces like this in this building where you might be able to raise the set point perhaps. We look right above our heads over here, we see an intake louver. You can see some leaves in there, it's not bad. Those are the types of intake louvers we want to look at. Make sure they're not filling up with grass clippings or leaves if they're starting to become a restriction. Behind me we got a roll-up door. This is typical on this side of the building, about 3 roll-up doors. We want to look at the seals along the bottom, along the edges right here, and perhaps from inside look up on top. And you've got a double door, set of double doors right here. You can see the seals on the bottom are in good shape. You'd have to open the doors to see if the seals on between the 2 doors are in good shape. Or if you go inside, you see any indication of light. Right now you've got the sun shining. It's a good opportunity to see how well the seals are working. Okay, so as we walk around the building, one of the things I wanted to highlight and not walk by without making a mention of, along the ground we have all these wall washer lights. They look like they're halogen. They possibly should be looked at for upgrading to a lower wattage or LED type approach. If they're halogen, they can be as high as 500 watts. There's 7 of them along this wall. That's 3,500 watts, 3.5 kW just on this wall. If there's more like this on campus or on this building, now you start saying, okay, how important is it for my photocell to be calibrated and working properly? If my lights are coming on 1-2 hours earlier than they could be, it could add up significantly over time throughout the year. So again, we walk by these things because they're part of the aesthetics. They add beauty to the building. They highlight the building, the landscaping, which is great. But we need to understand how they're impacting the bottom line when we're looking at the base load for the building. We can see the building drops energy at night, and some of that is lighting, so we want to pay attention to this and not just simply walk by. The other thing I'll highlight while I'm here is you can see the expansion joints. This is typical of an expansion joint on this brick wall. It looks great. So what we're seeing right here is 2 conduits that have come out of the building. You can tell they're recently installed because of the shiny metallic look. They're not weathered, and when this was routed from outside of the building, the holes here that were drilled were not sealed, and you can feel some cool air coming out. The Gupong has taken a reading with the infrared camera, and in fact it shows that we have some cool air exfiltrating out of the building. It's not significant, but it should be addressed. We're trying to seal up the building for both exfiltration losses as well as infiltration. So this is a low-cost opportunity. So now we're up here on the roof. We want to quickly look at, we're not going to check every air handler, we're going to spot check. We want to look at the condition of the roof while we're here. We've got some roof drains right here behind me. If you've got buildings that are plugging up with debris, then you probably got water that's becoming a lake, and you want to make sure you address that. That's just a side note. If I've got holes in my roof and I got water going through because it's not draining properly, now I got mold issues. If I've got water that's standing on my roof for any period of time, if it finds its way into the building, so is cold air, so is other things that I don't want in my building. So again, roof drains are important. If I've got snow melt, heat trace, are those active? Gutters, are those on right now this time of year? They hopefully are turned off. When we jump into the air handler boxes here, we want to spot check filters. We want to make sure if equipment's got handoff auto switches that they're all in auto. So those are some of the things we want to look at. Dampers, if we can look at the economizers, we want to make sure that if they're supposed to be on full recirc, that the outside air dampers are not stuck wide open. Those are some of the things that we want to look at. We'll spot check. Behind me here, we've got you've got your drain lines. I'm not sure what this is for, if it's for a coolant coil or if it's for the humidifier. It's got heat trace right here. and the heat trace is on. It's a small load. Maybe it's always on, I don't know. I don't know, it comes out of this box right here. Looks like there's maybe another one inside here. And then you've got a drain line right here. This is exposed, it's cold, it's obviously cold condensate, so it's coming off of the cooling coil, and you can see it's draining into the roof drain. So that's a good thing. It's just something to be aware of. The roof's got some bubbles in it. That's something that the maintenance people might want to be looking at as well, facilities people. Those are the things. So that's all I wanted to highlight right here. This fan system appears to be stable. It's running well. The filters, we were inside. The filters were nice and clean. The return, it was on full recirc, except for minimum outside air. Again, the minimum outside air damper is quite large on these air handlers. That would be the only question, is whether we're bringing in more minimum outside air than we need or not enough. And with a building this size, the population density that fluctuates from hardly anything to quite a few people, it looks like right now it's designed to bring in minimum air as if it was fully occupied.
These two VFD are for the supply fan for air handler 17s, and you can see that VFD speed drive, speed ramp up from 34 Hertz to 37 Hertz in like a very short time frame. So that can be heard to the motor and the belt. It could be related to the steady pressure control. So we'll later on look at the control program and figure out what's the control logic for this.
So we're here in air handler number 9, and inside this air handler, there's actually a separate room. The air handlers are on my right. We have behind us the control panel, a VFD for the return fan. We have some piping, a heating coil up above us here. We have insulated pipe. We have isolation valves on chill water piping right here. And what we're trying to make sure when we're walking down a mechanic room is isolation valves should be fully open, as we see here and right here on the hot water loops. Right above me here is a pump with an isolation valve that we can see has been partially closed. And when we find valves that are partially closed like this, that usually indicates there may be a balancing issue and someone's trying to reduce flow on the pump. The pump is further back. That puts a restriction in the line. That's not the best way to solve a problem. That might be a short-term fix. Right here on my right, we have a VFD, and we can look at the screen. It has an output reading of the speed of the fan. It's very stable. That indicates really good control for the return fan. The two supply fans that run in tandem with the return fan, their VFDs are behind us about 20 feet. And we notice that the readout on the screen for the supply fans is varying about 3 to 4%, or 3 to 4 Hertz, I should say, over about a 30-second period, which indicates a little bit of instability. We want to see stable output signal on VFDs, indicates good control. So in this case, the return fan's operating really well. The supply fan's behind us. The control loop, the PID loop might need to be looked at. There might be a sensor issue. It could be a belt or fan issue. Right behind me here is the control panel. And what we want to look at when we're looking at a control panel is we want to make sure that any plug-in relays that you see right here, they're not tipping out of the sockets. These are plug-in socketable relays. You can see the LEDs light up when they're energized. And we look down here, we can see the controllers. This is automated logic, real good product. Over here on the right, we can see the terminal strip. And we just want to spot check and make sure that we don't see any signs of wires that have been removed or loose, any jumpers in place, anything like that. So everything looks pretty good. And I would say that, again, if the people who are taking care of the controls are on top of things, they're probably aware of any communication issues, whether or not there's any failures in the hardware. This is the heart of the control system for the rooftop unit or units. And right above me here is a heating coil. These are common in mechanical spaces. In this fan room, we have a hot water coil. The good thing is we put an infrared camera on here, or we can put our hand up there on the coil surface. Either one will do to indicate that the coil is not heating the space. It's 95 degrees outside. It's about 85 in here. We don't need to be adding additional heat. So it's good to spot check your heating coils in the summertime, make sure they're not active. What we want to talk about on air handler number 4, all the filters and the coils that I've looked at look really clean. So I think the O&M staff's doing a really good job maintaining the filters, maintaining the coils. On the far end, you've got a DX cooling system that serves the cooling coils. The condenser, outdoor condenser coils, I believe the far side is starting to plug up with bird feathers and other debris. So you must have birds that like to live up here. Apparently it's a nice warm spot. So that might be something that requires some additional looking at. The same thing that we're seeing on air handler after air handler is your minimum outside air is always wide open, and we don't know if that's an excessive amount of outside air or if it's not enough. We don't see any CO2 sensors, so that might be something we would recommend. It would be a cost issue, would be to upgrade your controls to have demand control ventilation and reduce your outside air. The only thing I'll say on the rooftop units, most of you have already heard it, is there's some belt noise, some bearing noise on some of these units. You can hear it on the condenser fans behind me. There's a fan up above us that's got a belt noise. And the outdoor coils, again, this one's starting to get dirty, nothing bad.
The next location on the walk down is the cooling towers. The makeup water lines to the cooling towers were both frozen this winter, and the heat tape was exposed and the insulation was not replaced as it should have been. Steps are being taken to replace the insulation. At one of the towers, a fan shaft bearing was making a lot of noise, indicating a possible failure. Possible control improvement would be a condenser water temperature set point reset based upon outdoor wet bulb temperatures and the cooling tower's design approach. Isolation valves were 50% closed with a piping system design with VFD-driven pumps. This creates additional pressure drops in the system, and it doesn't allow the plant to take advantage of the VFD-driven pump capabilities. We recommend putting the isolation valves back to the original design configurations. The current configuration should not be a long-term solution. While walking down the boiler room, it is determined that the lead boiler is running at temperatures in excess of 170 degrees Fahrenheit, which is typical of cold, winter weather operations. The recommendation is to operate the lead boiler per the vendor's instructions. The vendor does not indicate on their website that their boilers are capable of operating at temperatures below 160 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Therefore, it would be prudent to optimize the hot water loop such that the VFD-driven pumps are operating to maintain the minimum differential pressure set points for summer loads. Observed building automation system trended data indicates that the differential pressure set point was set at 20 pounds per square inch. For a closed-loop system, a differential pressure set point of 20 psi is too high for summer conditions. This should be lowered for summer and warm weather operations to no greater than 10 psi. The recommended implementation method would be to manually decrease this set point by 2 psi increments over a 1 to 2 week period during warm weather and to monitor for impacts in the building. If no impacts are observed, decrease again and monitor. Stop decreasing at 10 psi set point or until occupant complaints can be directly related to a reduction in the set point. The optimum implementation method would be to configure the set point to automatically increase or decrease based upon either outside air temperature or demand feedback from the building automation system. The average heating valve position is a very good method to do this.
So we're in the metal shop, and next door was a wood shop. They both have compressed air. They both have lighting controls that appear to be occupancy sensor based or manual light switches. They have dedicated HVAC systems. So what we're really saying is that there's an opportunity to optimize your BAS and either set it up so the schedules are significantly tighter, or put a occupancy sensor in here that would override the schedule. And you have some daylighting opportunities in this space right here. Right now the lights are off, but we've got over 120, 150 foot candles of light. You've got compressed air that can be manually valved out, and we would recommend that the occupants valve out the compressed air when they're not using them. If you look up here to my right, you'll see some uninsulated pipe. The compressed air obviously is uninsulated. If you look real close, you'll see some domestic hot water. It looks like at the Unions or at the 90s or the T, they had to remove the insulation, remove and resolder some pipe. The insulation was not replaced. That happens all the time. Those are the things that we would recommend that everyone pay attention to when they're walking down a building. Insulation can be a huge opportunity. It's not a no cost, but a low cost. But I think your biggest opportunity in this space is to tighten up your schedules for your HVAC systems so that they're not running when no one's in the space.
The next location on the walk down is the Pottery classroom. This location has natural lighting via skylights, like the metal shop, as well as a roll-up door, which is tightly sealed. This location is part of the original building, dating back to 1972. This predates the HVAC and ventilation upgrades made to automatically ventilate and remove heat. Before the upgrades were made, skylights were used to ventilate. These skylights do not appear to be necessary, yet during the walk down we see that they are open. No one knows how long they have been open or what weather conditions this may have exposed the interior of the building to. The same can be said for the operable windows that were noted as being open on the front side of the building to highlight the importance of paying attention to the building envelope, especially where occupants can impact the envelope integrity by opening windows and doors and then leaving them open. The opportunity for this area includes making a determination of the need for the skylights. If they're not needed, they should be kept closed or they should be removed. The facilities management staff is aware of the situation and will make a determination soon because over the summer the roof is being redone.
So what we see right here is you've got a thermostat. There's one just like this over on the opposite side for fan coil 14A. We see that if you look closely, there's a red light on. I've been told that means it's in an occupied mode. So it's hopefully on a schedule, probably the same schedule that we've seen most of the other HVAC systems, maybe 6 to 11. Could it be tightened up? Possibly. The other thing that I'm going to point out right here is there's a override timer. This is probably intended to be an override timer. So if someone comes in here after hours and the HVAC system's not running, they can turn this, and it's set up for 0 to 6 hours. I just clicked it to 1 hour. So my question would be, if you had this type of a design, it's already built into your building, already part of your HVAC system, would you think about running from 6 to 11, or would you think about tightening that schedule up and tell the occupants, the users, train them, maybe put signage on here, go through some educational process, because you got to change the culture now. Everyone's used to this always running. Now we're going to say, you know what, it's not always going to run. Just like when we get home, when we pull into the driveway, we keep the key in the ignition, we get out, we walk into our house. Tonight we're going to eat dinner, we're going to go to bed. When we get up tomorrow morning, we're going to hop out, run out to the car's still running, we don't have to warm it up. Great idea, right? No, it's stupid. And we laugh at that, but that's kind of what we're doing with our HVAC systems. We're just running them just in case we've got everything up to snuff. And we're paying a high energy price to do that, plus we're running the equipment for a lot more hours out of the year. So this is another way to say, you know what, I'm going to turn the ignition off, if you will. I might give it a 4-hour schedule. I might give it no schedule. I might tell it, I could program it in the BAS to say, you know what, in extreme weather only are you going to run? Or when the temperature here drops below or above a certain value, are you going to run? The problem with that approach is the space. If it's too far from what we want it to be, and we got to bring it back down because we're going to have this space occupied with people, and if we don't know when that's going to happen, if we can put, what, a couple hundred people out here maybe? That's about 500 BTUs per body, so that's a lot of cooling load. If we haven't pre-cooled it, we might lose the space. So there's this balance. What kind of lights do you got above your heads there? These look like PARs, and they're probably 150 minimum. There's about 30 of them. This piano, it's actually an organ. They got nice big pipes. You can see them real well from here on the stage, on my left and on my right. And so I'm guessing that they might have some sensitivity to temperature. I don't know how much. So the age-old question that we get into in a space like this, and I'm just going to say like this, meaning data centers, museums, tapestries, anything that's musical halls, anything with winded instruments, wood instruments. I have yet for someone to tell me what are the temperature and humidity boundaries that I have to maintain. We're bringing in minimum outdoor air, and there's hardly any occupants. In fact, for probably all the spaces we've been at, the auditorium before this one, the shops before, we know that if the air handling units are typical of what we saw, they had a dedicated minimum outdoor air damper. As soon as it was 6 a.m., it went open. And if it makes sense to economize, then yeah, it should be open. But on a day like today, we're over ventilating. We do not need that much outdoor air. We don't have any CO2 sensors, so we're just kind of brute force throwing outside air, ambient, to make sure that we don't have indoor air quality issues. When we're really concerned about temperature and humidity, and we might be challenging the space by bringing in outdoor air that's excessively hot, excessively humid, so you really need to ask yourself, do I need to come up with a better strategy? And I like the idea of eliminating the outdoor air. The other thing I've heard on humidity for these kinds of spaces, I've never heard the 30 to 55%. What we heard was their music hall, they said it really didn't matter what the temperature or humidity was. What was more critical for calibration, expansion, contraction was they did not want to see the temperature change more than 1 degree every 4 hours. So if you wanted to relax the temperature in the summertime and let it come up to 78, do it in a managed but progressive systematic approach. In the wintertime, if you wanted to let it stay cooler, again, let it drop down at a slow rate. And the question I have is, if these are sensitive to temperature change and you put in 500 people in this auditorium like that, are you really going to be able to maintain the temperature and humidity in the space from making a huge spike?